Hello, human beings. How are you? I'm John Haddad. This is This Week in Cassandra on Planet Cassandra. With me, Luke Tillman, also technical evangelist for DataStax. And of course, now we have Evan Chan from TuppleJump. He is pretty much one of the most intense analytics people in the Cassandra community that I know of. So that's pretty exciting, I think. So we got a couple blog posts that we're going to be looking over. We're going to be talking to Evan about analytics on Cassandra without ETL, which is kind of a weird little thing that not a lot of people are aware of, I think, or at least haven't been over the last few years. And it's definitely getting more popular. So let's take a look at our blog posts. First thing that we're going to dig into, this Sysdig post about analyzing what's going on in production. This thing I thought was awesome, being like having a lot of time in the ops world. I love this Sysdig post. Luke, tell me, Luke. What did you enjoy the most out of this?
Well, I'm not an ops guy, so anytime there's an ops post, I kind of, and I also happen to be the token Windows guy on the team, so my Linux foo is pretty weak when it comes to stuff like this. So I'd ask you, because you were really excited about this. I was definitely familiar with some of the tools that they were talking about, where it looks like maybe this is sort of an Uber tool to kind of wrap up a whole bunch of stuff that you might use on a regular basis to kind of debug Cassandra or whatnot. What is it that you kind of like as more on the ops side of things was kind of excited about?
Well, so I was going to try and not rant about this for the next 10 minutes, but since the ball is in my court, I don't mind doing it. Okay, I haven't spent a lot of time working with Sysdig yet, so like reading this article was really cool for me. There's a couple things I really appreciated about it. One was the attention to detail that is in this post, to me, is absolutely amazing. I love this thing. It's really cool when someone's trying to debug a performance problem and they take the time to look at like the system calls that are actually being dispatched and like visually graph things.
So just real quick, like explain to like somebody who's watching this or listening to this that hasn't read the blog post yet, like what is Sysdig? Just kind of like overall.
Sure. So Sysdig is a utility that you can use that effectively it replaces like IO stat, top, like it's like more than dstat, more than TCP dump, more than netstat. Like it's just a whole bunch of utilities kind of all wrapped into one tool that is like super comprehensive and clearly really, really well thought out by like some people that have a lot of time in operations. So that's the thing. It's not just like some tool built by like some random dude who's like has never touched a server and is like, I'm going to build an ops tool, and it's like, thanks for nothing. Like, it's actually a really, really well done tool. So the post basically is talking about going through and looking at all the stuff that's happening in Cassandra from a system perspective. So you kind of like, you can just look at the actual I/O that's going on, like to your disk, right? You can see and you can plot your disk activity for a particular Cassandra query, and that's really, really cool. I mean, that's extremely powerful. Evan, what do you think about this? Like, I know that you've had to touch some of this stuff before. What's kind of your take on this?
Yeah, this looks pretty cool, especially for working with containers. Oftentimes the pain you need to log in and find specific tools. So one tool to root them all sounds great in my book.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of this. Like, I'm definitely going to be digging into this and ripping it apart, figuring out what I can replace, because I've got an ops talk that's like, just a smorgasbord of tools.
Yeah,
and it'd be
15 slides just on tools.
Yeah, it's like, hey, now you need to like, it's like you need strace and IO stat and dstat, and I just kind of go off, and now I can just like write one slide that's like Sysdig, and then my talk is over basically. So
another good thing about this article though too was he kind of walks you through the steps of how to debug a Cassandra problem like that using this tool too. So from a practical practical perspective, not just to like talk about how great this tool is. It's very nice too to kind of see the thought process that went into it.
Yep. Huge fan of this one. The next thing that we had on our list was kind of cool, like an anti-patterns post. And I like these. I love like a little bit of sarcasm. How not to start with Cassandra. It's really, really it's great because I think it's how a lot of people try and start with Cassandra, and unfortunately they kind of get it wrong and shoot themselves in the foot. What do you think?
I was going to say, I kind of feel like it was like, we go around and we do these Cassandra Days events, and you and I are often in the beginner track presenting to people that are brand new, that have relational database experience, which is almost 100% of the rooms we present to, but don't have really any Cassandra experience. And I felt like this blog post is like a lot of the things that we tend to say during those presentations, between the two of us and Patrick McFadden too. It's just covering a lot of the stuff that people almost always try to do, but probably shouldn't in a lot of cases.
You guys, so one of the points that this blog post had in here was about iterating over your data model, right? Like just things that you have to solve up front. Do you guys? So one of the things that's interesting about this is that we always tell people is you want to know your queries up front, right? So you can optimize to query against a single partition. I don't know. Do you like in the other databases that you guys have worked with? Like, I personally have found that the same thing kind of applies. Like, even if you're working in the relational world and you're like, third normal form, it's amazing. The reality is you still need to know your queries. Like I have not encountered a magical database that you just throw random stuff at it and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, I got your data, like, and it's fast and I didn't need to know anything. Like, I don't know. Have you guys touched this mythical unicorn database where it just does shit for you automatically?
No, I think every database you need to do data modeling and understand
how it works.
And I mean, I guess I just make the point, like, and I like to make this at Cassandra Days too, is that, like, you touched on third normal form, and it's so ingrained in us with people with relational backgrounds that, like, you do data modeling up front, but a lot of it is on autopilot because there is this sort of like kind of prescribed way that you kind of start your data model. So, like, you're not thinking about it probably as much, and you're definitely not thinking about it in the same ways, I think, that you do with Cassandra data modeling, where you're, kind of, at least on the transactional side, you're starting with your queries up front to try and make them fast. And that's because, we don't have joins, we don't have secondary indexes, we can't just, I will give the example. Well, we do, we do, and we have better ones now. Yeah, but that's a whole other topic. But we don't have those kind of things to just, the queries we don't think about up front. We don't have those things to kind of fix the problem for us later, that we do in a relational database. So.
Yeah. Well, maybe we actually do have those tools. That's an interesting segue. The other thing that we wanted to talk about was kind of this whole analytics world, right? Fixing your data model, like Luke, I completely agree with you that, if you have a totally broken data model, you roll into production and you're like, hey, I'm going to use Cassandra's, let's say you're using pre 3.4 secondary indexes. I mean, I know most people in the world have already upgraded to 3.4. It's just natural. But if on the off chance you haven't, and you roll secondary indexes production and they're terrible, fixing that, not easy, especially if you've got a lot of data. People are, they have to write scripts to migrate their tables around and do dual writes, and it can be kind of a pain. But one of the things that I really have liked is how easy it's become to set up a new data model or new tables based on existing data by using Spark, right? And that kind of this kind of like lets us talk about analytics with Cassandra and having a tool for doing like batch jobs, right? Which I think is pretty awesome, right? Like, how many times have you looked at like Lambda architecture and seen
Yep.
We have to do all this like chaos and this ETL and it's just a lot of like cognitive overhead. So I think one of the reasons why I'm really excited to have you talk with us today, Evan, is you're one of the first people that I've heard of that had been working with Spark and Cassandra together. I actually saw your talk at the Fort Mason Summit when you kind of presented this stuff, and it really, it was like, wow, like this is awesome. So what have you kind of seen in the last couple of years about like with working with analytics and Cassandra together?
I think we're definitely seeing more and more people that want to try out using Spark and Cassandra to do queries, especially those coming from the relational world or having to work with traditional BI stacks kind of type. And I think the two things you speak of are really interesting. Kind of one is the need for data modeling, but two is that coming into Cassandra world, things are a bit different, right? But that you don't have the joins. But I think that when you look at the power of Spark, one thing that it gives you is that you can do these more complex things. You can do joins. That doesn't make them fast necessarily, but the fact that you can do them and can do other things opens up a lot of other possibilities. For example, you see more people trying to marry Cassandra with machine learning by using Spark. Like they can store the raw data, the time series data, then they can pull it out and build models with it, which is pretty powerful, and like what you mentioned about the Lambda architecture, that's something that I've spoken about, and my colleague Helena Edelson has talked about. In fact, we're doing a joint talk at Strata next week about this. But the idea is that I think for a lot of people that they want the benefits of Cassandra, they want to be able to write to a solid database that is idempotent for their IoT or time series stuff. But then at the same time, they need to run a lot of analytics on it. So what a lot of people are doing is that they would ingest into Cassandra, but at the same time, they are doing ETL into whatever HDFS files. And then suddenly you got these two systems that are both like, you need to maintain two systems and you need to figure out how to merge results. So this is like pretty complex, right? And something that if you can avoid it and do everything with one system, why not do that, right?
So what are the challenges? Why are people doing that ETL step? What are the challenges with doing Spark or other analytics just directly on top of Cassandra? What is it that makes Cassandra sometimes difficult to use in that scenario?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I mean, I think I think the challenge that people have is that Cassandra is designed for you to read small amounts of data, like with massive concurrency, right? And read and write, and so it works extremely well for that. But if you want to use it to read a huge amount of data for bulk analytics, then you need to be a bit more creative. So if you just use the normal SQL tables, you might find that the data size and query speeds are not what you might be used to from the HDFS or Hadoop worlds. So you need to be a bit more creative, and there's a couple of different strategies you can take. Like I think the traditional strategy would be, let me model many different tables for queries. So let me have a job that can summarize. Like one thing we used to do at Uyala would be to have massive Hadoop jobs. We would then crunch every conceivable slice and dice kind of query you could run, and we would write those in Cassandra. That way you can read them out as very small queries. But that has some limits and becomes inflexible, because then anytime you need to change something, I would need to edit my massive Hadoop job.
Yep.
That would not be easy. And for certain kinds of queries, you don't have enough space to write out every single kind of query, right?
Right. Like as the number of
as the number
that you need to query on the permutations.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. Exactly.
Totally impractical.
And the other thing is that so right now I'm working with an enterprise that is actually looking to move a data warehouse into Spark and Cassandra. So for them, it's kind of a trade-off, right? The more there's certain reports you have to run, and there's some flexibility that is required. On the extreme, we can try to aggregate everything into tables that you can do small reads. But that increases the ETL complexity. And there's certain, like they have a traditional star schema where certain dimension tables might get slowly updated. Mm-hmm. So then if they get updated, then having to update all of your query tables becomes more and more complex. Yep. So it's kind of a trade-off. Like if you look at a scale, like do you want to go all the way to that end where you write everything and try to update everything, or do you try to do something that is more in between? And I think Spark gives you that flexibility that where you don't have to write everything, you don't have to carry data modeling to the extreme. You can have, data modeling is still very important. You still want to have partition keys that facilitate really fast lookups, but then you don't have to quite get it to that extreme and can do more things in Spark.
Yeah, I think I think the thing that allows that, or the flexibility that we have there, is that we're not as sensitive to latency, right? Like when you're serving like a customer, milliseconds make a big difference.
Yeah.
But if you have a big analytics job that were to take 10 minutes to run, and then you kind of like, hey, cool, like I made an optimization to this key and it takes 9 minutes to run, like you didn't really solve probably a major problem, right? Like unless you happen to have an SLA of 9 minutes 45 seconds, like then you're fine, I guess. But like for the most part, it really isn't going to make that big of a difference.
Yeah.
So I really, really like the additional flexibility that you can kind of get with Spark and not having to remodel all your data. I completely agree with you, and that's really what kind of like the whole data science world is all about, right? We don't know what we want to get, and that's kind of what people struggle with a lot of the times when they look at Cassandra. They're like, what do I do? Like, what happens when I don't know all the queries that are coming up front? And I love how you can get that with Spark. I wanted to also talk to you, Evan, a little bit about the project that you've been working on for a while now. So PhiloDB, we had we had a meetup together in Amsterdam, and it was pretty cool to talk to you for a while about that. I don't know. Can you talk a little bit about PhiloDB?
Yeah, definitely. Would love to dive into that. So sometimes you have cases, as John mentioned, sometimes your jobs are like machine learning jobs that could take a long time, like half an hour to an hour, and you don't care. But sometimes you do actually care about response time. Like you might, for example, for BI, your enterprise might be used to say 5-second response times, right? And so you don't want something that's half an hour. You want something that responds in the seconds frame. And so PhiloDB is basically an OLAP analytics database built on top of Cassandra. And what it does is it stores data in a Parquet-like columnar format so that it is very compact and quick for reading out a subset of your data. For analytics queries, typically you only care about a few columns out of your many columns in your fact table, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And so it stores this data as regular Cassandra tables, and the benefit of this is that you can manage PhiloDB tables just like regular Cassandra tables from an operations point of view. You can back them up and restore them exactly the same way that for regular Cassandra, but you get the benefits of very fast query speeds for Spark. Mm-hmm. So the data gets stored very compactly. I think for some fact tables that we've seen up to a 40x reduction in size, and the speed gains are also quite big. So basically, we did a blog post. This allows you to do ad hoc queries in a reasonable time frame on Cassandra, and as well as to do things like joins quicker.
Nice. Yep. And that was the blog post that you had on Planet Cassandra.
Yep.
Read it. Read it in the blog. All right. Luke, thoughts?
I got nothing. I am curious though. What do you guys at TupleJump work with other companies? Like, what is the appetite for analytics on Cassandra? Like, what kind of uptick are you seeing or interest in PhiloDB and that kind of stuff?
I think there's definitely interest. You see folks, in fact, the current customer that I'm working with, I think, looking at some of the work we've done before, that's one reason why they're interested in using Cassandra, Spark, and DataStax Enterprise to replace the data warehouse, is because they saw this possibility.
And is it mostly people just wanting to simplify their stack, like you said earlier? It's like, why use two tools when you can get away with doing it with one, sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think for some folks it's definitely that, so then some folks are like, well, we don't really want to run a giant Hadoop system. We like what Cassandra promises. So yeah, I think that's definitely a big part of it.
Yeah.
And I've seen one company that is considering using stuff like Redshift, but for them the economics of running and the simplicity of running Cassandra Stack in the cloud with something like FileDB actually makes more economic sense than something like Redshift. So yeah, we're seeing that angle as well.
Nice. Very, very cool. Well, we have, I think we're about out of time. Yeah, Evan, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and talk to us. I know you're really busy.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Anything you want to? You have a talk coming up? Where is that again? Strata?
Yeah, a couple of things highlighted. We have Helena and Edelson and I have a talk at Strata titled "No Lambda: Simplifying Your Analytics with Spark, Streaming, Cassandra, and FileDB." So come and check it out. I think it's on Wednesday, the 30th of March, in San Jose Convention Center next week. I will also be doing a developer showcase there on FileDB, where I'll be showing some demos of working with it with Spark Notebook and some interesting data sets. So come by and check it out. And finally, TurboJump is we provide development services for enterprises wishing to integrate the latest, the best, in open source big data, including Spark and Cassandra. So we're interested in partnering with us, having us help you out. Also, let me know.
Cool. And I think you're also hiring.
Yes, that's right. So yeah, contact me if you're interested.
I'm like, something tells me what to hire people. All right, cool. Well, thanks, guys. I think we can wrap this one up.